All right, Interlagos, Brazil. Uh, New track for the Ray, I believe. Setup is here. We'll go through that, but just a couple of bits before that. So if you're new to this track, um, you really have to open up corners on entry and exit. That's how you go fast on this track, but in a race, doing those things is going to leave the door wide open for people to dive in on the inside. So definitely practice how to do a fast lap here, but also be aware in a race, it's really going to be a lot trickier if there's someone right behind you who can really dive up on the inside. So practice those defensive lines because they are going to play a big role. Also, it's been a long time since I've been on this track. I remember it having a lot more X's and slowdowns. In the season testing session, I did not encounter any slowdowns, and the X's weren't all that unreasonable. Really only picking them up if you went really wide on entry or exit. So just watch out for that in the practice sessions. Once the track is live, it may be more strict. So just watch out for that. So as far as the setup goes, car not quite as low as it goes. Just that you do make use of a lot of curbs here. So just a little bit higher on the ride height. Damper compression, a lot of downhill braking in here, so that is boosted up a little bit. Brake bias, again, a lot of downhill braking here, so if you're having trouble locking up, increase that brake bias. It is on the higher side of things. Suspension's all as low as it can go. If you've been watching the channel, you know I've been playing around with camber, so the camber is changed up here. Left hand side is a little less camber than the right. Toe is increased on front and rear just to give you a little more turn in. Ride height, of course, in the rear, not quite as low as it goes. ARB is 10. If you're learning this track for the first time and you're struggling a bit with the back end kicking out on you, knock this down to a 5. It will make the car a lot more drivable as you learn the track, but you do need to get that rotation. Lots of sharp corners here, so to go fast you do need to have that at a 10, but if you're learning it, 5 will make things easier. Rear compression and damper is I left the same. Fuel level, I was doing this with 13 liters. That got me 11 laps, so I'm not quite sure if that's going to be enough for the race. And gear stack is tall. You do need tall. The two big straights here, a lot of drafting. You do need the tall, and in fact I did try the standard, and I actually prefer the gearing ratio of the tall anyway. So that is the setup. We will go into the lap here in slow-mo and then run it out at full speed as usual. So coming into turn 1, fourth gear, again, drafting here. This turn 1 is going to be a big passing opportunity area. Looking for the 50 board here. Getting on the brakes just at it, or maybe just a smidge after it. You can go deeper into this corner braking, but you are going to be really compromised on exit. This section downhill is a lot of time lost or gained if you do it right or wrong. But if you're battling, that's going to change things. But hard on the brakes, down into second gear, kind of looking for the end of this yellow and green bit to turn in. This is downhill, so when you're on the more level surface, braking hard, but as you get into this downhill section, you have to release the brakes. If you are still hard on the brakes here, your back end is going to spin. You can see I had to do a little counter steer. I came in a little hot. And so once you get into this downhill section, you have to pick up the throttle, or at least be off the brakes, in order to get that back end gripping up. Making use of the curb here, you got to watch how much you take. A lot of these curbs, most of them, are sort of a triangle shape, so the part near the grass is actually at a downhill slope, and the part leading up to that peak is an uphill slope. Getting onto the downhill slope actually unsettles the car quite a bit, so just watch out for that. It can cause you some trouble. So just picking up the throttle, and again for this one, there was X's in the past. I found it a lot easier to get an X. You want to make use of all of this curb. This one is pretty flat. It doesn't have a big downhill portion. So watch that grass. I think that's where you might get the X if you get onto the grass. So through that, making sure the throttle is on, because yeah, a lot of time lost or gained here. And again, making use of this curb on exit. And this one is one of those sloped curbs, so getting your tire onto the downhill slope here is gonna unsettle your car a little bit. It's not the end of the world, but it probably will cost you a little bit of time going into this big straight, so try and keep it on the first half of the curb. And then pretty easy exit, full throttle, lots of wide open track here. And again, this is leading into the other big straight where there's going to be a lot of passing attempted here, so practice defensive lines. Big straight. Alright, so coming up to the next turn. This turn is probably the second trickiest part. That downhill section is the trickiest part, I find. This is probably the second trickiest part. Looking for this cement patch as the marker in fourth gear course. Shifting down at that cement patch into third on cold tires. You may want to do this in second for the first lap or two or three. Depending on what traffic's in front of you as well. Second may be the best bet. Hard on the brake. Again, this is getting into a downhill section. It's not as downhill, obviously, but it is downhill. You have to be releasing the brakes as you turn in here, picking up the throttle just to get that back end planted. If you come in here too hot, you will spin out. And then lining up, getting onto this curb. Again, it's one of these triangle curbs, so getting too much on the inside can be a little unsettling. And this just takes a lot of practice. If you come in way too hot, you're going to spin the car out. If you come in a little bit too hot, you are going to run wide and get an X. So just modulating the throttle, and it just takes some practice to feel how quickly you can get on the throttle and how much to keep this car in bounds, because you have to keep your left tire inside the track here. This white line, you cross it, you get an X. In a race, not a big deal, but in your quali lap, that is going to obviously wreck your quali lap. And then just picking up the throttle, cutting to the inside, pretty basic. So looking for the Marshall box coming into the next corner here. Cold tires a little bit more on the brakes. When the tires are warm, it's not a big braking zone. Shifting down into third just to get the car turned in, and then just sort of modulating the throttle. You want to again run up to the edge of the curb here, picking up the throttle. It's sort of a double apex here, so run the car out a little wide. Probably I could have come at that a little bit wider, and then turning the car back in, getting right up against these curbs as well, picking up the throttle. Now this is a section here where you really can extend the track, so watch out for that. People will try and dive up the inside, but you got to extend the track here to go fast. You can cross this white line without getting the X. However, I think if you get on the green stuff, that's where you get the X. And getting onto this grate can be a little unsettling to the car. There is not a great brake marker for this section. As you see, the track starts to turn in here. That's what I'm using as a marker. Obviously, if there's a car in front of you, that is not going to be, you're not going to see it. So this just takes some practice, some feel to judge where you are to the apex. Oh, and by the way, this is foggy. I did a couple of practice sessions, and every session was foggy. There was no sunlight, so things are a little harder to see in this fog. Um, yeah, so this just takes some judgment and practice. There's you could use this signage up here, but it's so far away and really not in a great position to judge. So just really got to practice this corner. Third gear, hard on the brakes, um, shifting down into first, and again, yeah, just opening this up as much as you can, turning in, and again, you got to release the brakes here as you turn in, and picking up the throttles when you can. Otherwise, the car is gonna want to spin, and you can totally use this whole curb. I think you can even get on the grasscrete here without getting an X. Um, if you get on the grass itself, I think that's where you do get the X. And picking up the throttle, leaving it in first. You could shift up here into second, but really I find leaving it in first is best. Once you get up to the top of the hill here, just lifting a little bit. Cold tires, a little bit of a bigger lift. You don't want to be stomping on the throttle here. Again, it is downhill, and you can spin out. Once you get into the camber of this, though, you can pick up the throttle a little early, as soon as you're really right into the camber of this, and pick up the throttle as early as you can, and it is a run to the next corner. So looking at this tree, sort of my actual, what I'm looking at is the change in angle and color of the barrier here. That's the braking point. Second gear, shifting down into first. A pretty good blast of brakes. Again, just releasing the brakes as you turn in and picking up that throttle a little bit, settling the rear end, and making use of these curbs. Again, these curbs, they have the angled bits, so just watch out for that. It can grab your car a little bit. Picking up the throttle on exits and just running it out wide. You can make use of the curb here. I believe you can get onto this grasscrete if you run it a little wide, but don't quote me on that. And then just sort of getting the car over to mid-track. I probably should have been over a little bit more than I am. Not the end of the world. However, coming into this corner, I did have to turn the wheel a bit more, and I did scrub just a tiny bit of speed. Didn't cost me a lot of time, maybe 5/100ths, not a tenth, but cost me a little time. And again, you can really open this one up. You can get over that white line. I think if you get on the blue stuff, that's where you get an X or run into trouble. And again, no good braking marker. Really no braking marker at all. There is a little kink in the track up here where it starts to turn into the left, and that's basically what I'm using as a braking marker. But again, a car in front of you, you are not going to see it. So it's just going to take some practice and judgment to know when to turn in and when to brake. So getting pretty hard on the brakes here, shifting down into second, and then turning in kind of just before the end of the grasscrete. This is a really important corner. If you mess this up, especially in your quali lap, your next lap is going to be compromised. So no pressure, but you have to nail this corner. And then again, just releasing the brake, picking up the throttle, easing it on as much as you can, getting as early as you can, and you can get onto this grasscrete. You really have to cut this corner in order to get on the power and not run wide. Just opening up the wheel, and you can, I believe, cross this white line. I did not cross this white line on this lap, but I think you can get onto this grasscrete, cross this white line, and not get the X. But watch out for that. It might be the X if you cross that white line. And then just work your way over back to the left. It's full throttle. Again, down this straight is going to be a big passing opportunity, so just keep the car tight to the left, and if you're battling, you'll want to keep it all the way to the left till the first corner, turn 1. So that's a 142.9. Track, I didn't say that. Track is 22 degrees, so that should be in the ballpark of the race temp. Track's 38% usage, so a little bit on the low side. So definitely 142s is probably going to be a really competitive time. But if you're in the low 143s, you should not be doing too badly. So we'll run it out at full speed. We'll see you out on track. Good luck.